particularly if it's a large tree that you're taking down. That costs a lot of money to take down, and so if FEMA is going to be paying 75% of that, they want to, you know, a photo or something showing that it actually truly existed in the location, because they will go verify it. This is, I want everyone to say yes to this program. There's nothing wrong with it. It is, so when your project specialist says, oh, this is a new program, yes, this is a good thing. There's nothing bad about this. What this allows is typically debris projects, which we all have in this room, they're only paid for overtime. So if your town has been working just your regular 8 days to pick it up from the disaster, that would not be eligible. However, if you say yes to the program, you're going to get paid for regular and overtime labor. So your force account straight time, your regular employees that are working.
And I'll just say by way of introduction, this debris pilot program was one of the provisions of the Sanity Recovery Improvement Act of 2013, and it allows communities to select off this menu of different pilot provisions they want to accept. And even though the latter ones are only for larger projects, that first one just allows you to check a box, and then your straight time is eligible. So it's a good deal.
For those of you that probably will have a large debris project, VTrans and WEC, you can also opt into this, and if you get it all cleaned up within 30 days of the date of the disaster declaration, you can not only get 75% share, you're actually getting 85% federal share. So that would be by March 5th. So get out there. If you get it cleaned up within 31 to 90 days from the date of the disaster declaration, you would get the 80% share. And I'm telling everybody this because if we do have another big disaster soon and you're going to have a large debris project, you need to tell your town to get out and clean it up fast, because there is an incentive. So you might be hearing, I mean, none of us are going to probably have a lot of large ones for this one, but I like to tell things in advance instead of saying, sorry, you missed out on this one, but just good to take back. And again, the debris pilot program, I think, would be in effect for the end of this year. It can be removed at any time, but I think it's in effect for the end of 2015.
It's been extended for this year.
Yeah. Emergency work, I already briefly touched on this. This is any like barricading for this disaster, and I don't believe we had a lot of that.
Can you go back?
Yes, ma'am.
But temporary moving the debris to the side of the road, that's what our road crew
Yeah,
move everything to the side, and they're going to chip it in the spring.
So what the project specialist may do is probably just write it as a debris project, more than likely.
Usually a debris operation is just that, debris operation.
Mm-hmm.
Basically picking up and moving debris.
Yep.
Cut and toss is a cat too, it's emergency protective measure, so we'll work it out with you, but that's generally what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Cut and toss is
If you're just going to cut and toss and leave it and not do anything else, it'd probably be just a category B. But if you cut and toss and you're going to go back and do something else, then it might be moved into an A. It depends on your work with your project specialist on that. Right? Okay. Your permanent work is your category C through G. That would be all of your utilities. This has a different deadlines. It's 18 months from the date of the disaster declaration to be completed. There could be opportunities for hazard mitigation, so make sure you work with your project specialist on that.
So, for example, for utilities, for Category F, there is a 9500 series guidance document about eligible 406 hazard mitigation opportunities for Category F. Things like reinforcing poles and
Guide wires.
additional guy wires and so forth. If you have poles that you took out of stock, you could potentially buy more resilient poles to replace that inventory, and that would be an eligible 406 cost.
Specific question, we've had, let's say, 15 pole lines went across country, and we've currently left it out because there's such a massive trees that have come on it. Would hazard mitigation be appropriate for us relocating that to a different location along the road?
Yeah, possibly. It has to be cost effective. They would look at the entire dollar amount of the project, and there's certain criteria it has to be met to meet like a cost effectiveness. Correct me if I'm wrong, John, but they would look at what it would cost to relocate it, where it'd be relocated. There's different criteria, environmental and everything that would be looked at.
You're asking the right question, and keep asking.
It
the
has
right
been
question.
allowed. It just depends on your particular, where you're relocating it and the cost of that.
If you're going to do that, would you get a hold of me? I just wanna make sure environmentally we're okay. We've got a number of standing agreements with various agencies that replacing poles in the existing rights of way or just repairing them, we're fine. But if you're gonna move them, particularly getting out of an existing alignment, and setting up new poles, we may need to look at it environmentally.
Yeah, maybe you can participate in the kickoff meeting with the hazard mitigation specialist.
Sometimes we get ahead of the game, you know, and we know where it's going, and we can work it out from there.
Sounds good.
Because oftentimes I won't see a project until it's written up and then in our system.
Mhm.
And that's when I just soon not have to address the non-issue.
Yeah, I think John or Fred will make sure that the project specialist coordinates to have you participate in all the hazard mitigation opportunities. So the deadlines, I've mentioned these briefly. The category A is your debris. It has to be cleaned up within 6 months from the date of the disaster declaration. Permanent, that's sometime in August.
August 3rd, and the state has authority to grant a 6-month extension on category A and B.
And the
You need
permanent,
more time,
yes,
for that
and
reason.
permanent work, a year and a half, that's 18 months. And I can grant up to an additional 30 months, but that definitely has to be written. I need it on town letterhead. The whole explanation is in your packet there. And then after that time period, I have to request it to FEMA. And Pete's already mentioned a little bit about environment. I'm going to let him talk a little bit more if he chooses to. He has a green book that he had at the front table. Did everybody get one of those? I would like to say that anytime that your town is working in or around the stream, particularly with your debris, to make sure that you get permission by A&R. There are a lot of requirements for that.
Afternoon. This is going to be a pretty easy lift environmentally. There's not too many endangered species that aren't hibernating right now, and there's not much else of concern environmentally. What I want to point out is in this green sheet, there's a section on debris, and there's some things to do and not to do. And some information on permitting, but basically if you're going to temporarily store it, you don't need to get a permit from the state. There's no federal permit involved. I would recommend that if you're going to do it for any length of time, or you've got a lot of debris you want to temporarily store, put it in an already disturbed area, and that way you don't have to be concerned about disturbing something that might not have been disturbed before. One of the things that we do in any disaster is track debris from sort of cradle to grave, but it's a very simple process. There's a debris form in here, and the only thing we want to know is where did you pick it up, how did you treat it, and where did you dump it. And for things like towns that are going to go in and chip it, debris along roadways chipped and broadcast into right away is perfectly fine, and that's all I need to know. With the power companies, it may get a little more involved. If you've got transformers down, I just need to know that you've got a plan in place of how to treat those properly. So I'll need that information included on the debris form. Transformer removed, temporarily stored, submitted to X company that treats transformers. And the same thing for the power poles. How did you treat those? Otherwise, I think we're in really good shape to move forward with this disaster and not have much in the way of environmental concerns. On the back page, there's a very good reference, I think, for both state and federal agencies, environmental agencies. My number's up here on the upper left. If you need to get a hold of me, you can just call me on my BlackBerry at any time. I live in Vermont, live in Richmond, and so I'm here.
Anytime after 11 p.m.
Well, I may not answer it after 11, but the other thing is, if you have a question about permitting, not both now and in the future, A&R has a very good system. They have a permit specialist in each one of the regions. They're all listed here, and if you've got a question, just call them up and ask them. I'm going to do X and Y. Do I need a permit to do this work? The only thing is, if you're going to burn woody debris, there's no state burn permit, particularly this time of year. There's no need for it, but you should notify your local fire warden or your fire chief. Okay, we're going to touch this off. I had one really interesting experience in Texas where they didn't do it, and I went in to figure out what they did with this woody debris. Met the minister who was out raking his yard, and I said, "Did you have any issues with this woody debris?" He said, "Well, not till they lit it. They put the woody debris just down the street, and all the cinders wound up on his church roof. He spent 2 hours with his fire hose out there trying to keep his church from burning down." But I don't think that'll happen here. Anyway, if you have any questions, see me afterwards, and good luck with your operations.
Here you go. Here, Peter. Thank you, Peter.
Oh, my glasses. Yeah, I need those at some point.
All right, so next I'm going to talk about what goes inside your project worksheet. Your FEMA project specialist will go into more detail, but I want you prepared. After we get your RPAs, and a FEMA project specialist will be assigned to you. And they will set up a kickoff meeting. But before they get to that kickoff meeting, I want you to prepare, because you should have as much documentation ready for them as possible. It's already been several days since this disaster, since December 9th. We should already have most of this ready for them. What you need is a list of the equipment that was used during that disaster, the make and the model of the equipment that your operators used. And also, they're going to need timesheets. So from the December 9th, whatever work that you've done to clean up the debris or the damages, they're going to want to see the time cards for those people. And they're going to want to know the hourly rate of those individuals, including the fringe. Fringe is the vacation time and Social Security. Everything else is put into that. If you pay overtime, they're going to want to see your pay policy. That's all included, and it's put into the project worksheet. So,
Where can we get a copy of the FEMA rates for equipment?
it's on the FEMA.gov website, I believe John said, and then if you don't know it, they're going to break that down for you. You don't need to actually write what it's going to cost. Just have a list of the equipment. And you would say, you know, our John Deere tractor is this horsepower, and this person drove it on this date for this many hours doing this. That's all they need to know, and they'll put it into the project worksheet. They'll figure out the cost code for that, and based on your time card, what you pay him, they'll figure all that out for you. You don't actually have to fill out all those papers.
This time?
Well, you should never have to fill them out. You might be requested to, but you don't have to fill them out. You can just, as long as you provide all this information to them. Materials, I think the only people in here that probably purchase materials are WEC, maybe the gentleman with the broken windshield. But anytime you buy anything, like the invoices must be generated. If you don't have an invoice, you pull something from stock, the last invoice that you had for that purchase, they would need that.
And because this was a severe winter storm event, but not a snow event, sanding, salting, plowing is not eligible.
Correct. Yeah, we do have to reach record snowfalls, and for Vermont that seems ridiculous, so it's really hard to become a winter storm event. The contracts, if you had any contractors that you hired, they're going to want to know how you procured them. Anything over $150,000 has to be competitively bid out. That means it has to go through the whole newspaper bid process. I know it seems like a very, cumbersome thing to do, but you have to think of it this way. If you were going to pay a contractor, you want to make sure that this is the best contractor and that you're choosing someone that's going to do the job properly. And you also want to pay probably the lowest amount. If this is something you're doing for your own home, you don't want to choose the highest one. And FEMA is paying 75% of your contract. So they have requirements that we have to meet. Otherwise, they will not reimburse for that. Another thing of the contract is it can't be time and materials, and that's because some contractors, as you know, find out FEMA's coming into town. I've seen this happen down in New Orleans in particular. They will drag their feet and take forever to do a job because they're like, well, we're getting paid hourly, time and materials. Those contracts do not fly with FEMA. They need it actually broken down and very detailed. And if you have a question on your contract at all, work with your project specialist. They will review it. They have a team of attorneys that will actually review it and tell you whether it's a good contract or not. And after 70 hours, up to 70 hours, you can use those time and material contracts. So after that point, then it would have to be bid out. And so if you have any work that's less than $150,000, you don't have to competitively bid it out, but you do have to call up to 3 people, 3 different vendors. Some of these towns only have 2 people that do that kind of line of work in their area. That's fine. Just document on this date we called this contractor, on this date we called this contractor. These are their quotes for the work. We went with this guy. Another reason why that's done is because there has been occasions where the town has called their brother-in-law to do the work. So we want to make sure that we're doing these accurately. Yes, sir. After the first 70 hours, yes. So my suggestion today, if you don't remember anything other than getting your RPAs to me, is that you go back to your towns and try to have contracts in place. Particularly if we have another Irene disaster, you don't want to be scrambling to look for a contractor when all of them are taken up. So get your town to vote on somebody to be, if you have damages related to debris, that you're going to use so-and-so. Vote it into your minutes that you're going to use them for the whole year. And how it's going to be paid out. Same thing for, roads and bridges. It's good to already have these contracts in place. Procured, yes. You have to procure them also the same way, same process. But it's easier. Otherwise, what happens is if you know you're going to have $150,000 worth of work, Irene, you can only work with that person for 70 hours if you don't have them procured. Then after that time period, you have to do the competitive bidding because it's a large project. It takes up to 2 weeks to do that through the newspaper process. So then you have to hold off on work for 2 weeks. So have these in place. A little bit further on that. And then all the documents I've already mentioned, photos, insurance documents. This applies to any damages to equipment. Have the full policy. FEMA will also like to see the claim that you've made. They will, whatever your insurance hasn't paid, they will look at the remaining as a possibility for reimbursement. And first and foremost, it has to be ineligible from the disaster. So this is not this disaster, but I work a lot with many of you on some of these things throughout the year, and Ron does as well. Improved projects. What is an improved project? This is, let's say you have a project worksheet that's written for a road that is 1 lane. It gets approved by FEMA. You get awarded money. Before you do any work, if you decide, and the town decides they don't want a 1 lane, they want 2 lanes because it's going to better suit the town. Before you do any work on the 1 lane that's been approved, and before you make it a 2 lane, you have to get it approved for your improved project. That means you have to fill out a form on my website. It's super short and easy. And then I also request a letter on the town letterhead of what you do plan to do and any design, the design plans and the cost of it, on how you're going to make it bigger. It has to get approved by environmental. And it has to get approved by many people. So, yes?
So like for the floods that we've all been through, would this apply to upsized culverts?
It depends. If it's a codes and standards, no. But if you have something that, let's say your project worksheet's already been approved to repair based on what it was before, and it's approved and closed, yes. If you decide to make it something else, before you do any work, you have to get approval. And more than likely, FEMA approves these because they don't have any extra costs. They will not pay you anymore outside of that, but they're going to want to know what it's going to cost the town. And they're going to know this because in the future, if there's another event there, they like to take a look at maybe different opportunities for hazard mitigation
And just
too.
to try to say this the punchline a different way, if you are going to do something different from what the project worksheet says, you need to let FEMA know before you do it. Because at the end of the day, if FEMA sees that you've done something different from what they approved, and it didn't go through the proper environmental review, you may end up with a de-obligation. It's not that they'll tell you you can't make it a bigger bridge. They'll say, we want to know that the bridge you built didn't endanger a species or violate a permit, whatever. So, just if your project worksheet doesn't conform with what you're doing, say so immediately.
This applies to even small projects. Everything. If you are giving federal grant money for a certain project, it's like a small project and you decide not to do it, you have to get approval if you decide to do something else. Otherwise, you could risk having money taken back. It's recently happened. So, alternate projects are your one-lane road is approved, and now you've decided to. The town doesn't really use that road. They want to close it down. So, but the project's already been approved for that. You can request, same sheet of paper, just say you want to do an alternate project. If you can't even remember between improved and alternate, just write what you want to do. I'll figure it out. But I do need a letter on what you plan to do with it or do with that money instead. But don't do anything yet. You have to get it approved by FEMA. I have to make a recommendation on what you plan to do with it. If you decide you want to do something with the town park instead with that money, I have to look at everything, the design plans that you put together, you know, the cost of that. I have to present that to FEMA, and it has to get approved before. FEMA is all very generous in allowing us to, you know, they come in for a disaster, you have damage to a road, and they're paying you for that road, and then they are kind enough to allow you to do something completely different with it, which is great. But it does have to be approved. The cuss word of the day is appeals. I like to avoid these. And if anyone's been through the appeal process, they'll probably know why. Very long process. And it's very difficult to get a different outcome if you don't have adequate documentation. That's why it's important everyone have ME access, work really closely with your project specialist in, you know, having them write your projects. If you're having issues with your project specialist at any time, please let me know so I can talk to FEMA and see if we can get get you someone else if it's a personality thing or whatever the issue is. But there's some wonderful FEMA people out there. I know some of you that still keep in touch with your project specialist from before. And so this is just something we want to make sure we avoid. This is, if you don't like the project, we can't just say, our applicant doesn't like this. Write it differently. We have to have a good solid reason why, a good case. We have to get all the engineers and everybody involved. Yes.
So we shouldn't have any appeals from this disaster. It's a
No.
small disaster, it's manageable. That said, you do have appeal rights as an applicant. They're our last resort. The key thing is to keep your state people in the loop all the way through, so that we don't end up with surprises at the end of the day where your FEMA person has written you a project worksheet and it's not what you need or what you think is right. It's harder for us to fix problems as the grantee if we find out about them after the project is already obligated. So be in the habit of having the state person, whether it's your district tech or Kim or Ron, in your conversations with people, in the email loop, and that way they see things as they go, and you should have no surprises.
Yeah, even if you don't get into ME that often to check on your project worksheets, please include us on every email that you have with your project specialist. Just because I don't like to find out about issues that arise after the fact, that it's really hard for me to do and support the town in making a change kind of after the fact. Sometimes things get obligated and it's really hard to turn things around at that point. So copy me or Tom or whoever your district tech is on emails. And I'm also going to, talk to FEMA and let them know this as well. So this is the financial portion of it. It's really important because a lot of things have changed. What we do differently, if you were an applicant from VTrans before, what we're doing now is if you have 5 small projects and 1 large, typically VTrans in the past would hold all your ERAF, your state share on those, until all of them were completed, including the large. But as you know, we still have a lot of larges open from Irene, and that can hold up all the funding from these ones from forever ago. Like, these projects could have been damaged over and over by that point. So what our finance team is going to do is when a small project is written, FEMA pays those out immediately. After we get the RPAs, obviously, and Karen is going to issue you what's called a sub-grant agreement. That's an agreement between the state and the applicant that there's going to be money transferred. This is going to be a non-executed sub-grant. It's just to get you your ERAF information, where your town stands, and prepare you for this. After your first project is written in Emmy, she's going to send out what's called the executed sub-grant agreement, and that's signed by the commissioner. In that, make sure you read it. It's very detailed on what you need to do. It outlines everything on how you get paid, because sometimes we'll see an applicant will say, I saw an Emmy, my project worksheet was obligated, but I don't have my money yet. So more than likely, we didn't get something back from your sub-grant agreement. It says in your sub-grant agreement that there's a form, the finance report form, and you have to fill that out and send it in to us to request payment. Otherwise, she won't send you anything. And also, before you can get any payment, all smalls, when all of your smalls, those 5 smalls are completed, we won't have 5 smalls, but if you have 1 or 2, when they're all completed, we'll send you out a PCCR. You can request it of me, your district tech may request it of me, or I might just say, you're ready for your PCCR. I see all of your projects are awarded in Emmy.
I'll just chime in and say, this is a lot of lingo. It's a lot to absorb. This is a small disaster, it's a small state, we're a small team. If you think you're waiting for money and you should have it, email Kim.
Yep.
Just
Email
ask us,
me
because
or
we
your district
see
tech.
We see often that the town is waiting for something and the state is waiting for something. And they just need to make that
Coordinate.
connection. So if you have a question, ask it and the process will flow.
So when your small projects are completed, this is the same as in the past. You'll be issued a PCCR, Project Completion and Certification Report. All it is, it has a list of your project numbers, the scope of work. Your district tech will go out and verify that the work is completed according to the scope. If something's off, we'll address it at that point. If it's good, we're going to go ahead and release the state ERAF share, even though you have that 1 outstanding large. We'll do it with the large one later. So the large ones actually are going to be closed. You can request payments on the larges as you're completing them, but we won't release the final state share until it's closed in Emmy, and that has to go through the whole closeout process, which we just talked about. And Ron or someone from my team will come out and do that closeout with you. They will also, when you have a large project, there's a form called a quarterly large project report. This is who's seen that? I think I emailed it in my letter recently. It's also on our website. Anytime you have a large project, it's a lot of money. It's a federally requirement that you have to report it. And that's because we have to report it, so we require it in our subgrants. It'll tell you if you have a large one to report this quarterly. And all we need from you, it says in our form, is where you are with the project, how much you've spent, when do you think it's going to be completed by, and the % that you're completed. And when I get those, if I see that you're 75% completed, I'm going to help you out and give you your closeout paperwork checklist so you know to get ready for closeout and the order it's all going to go in. Tiffany, do you have a question? Teasing.
You guys could talk out in the hall now.
I'm teasing. She can hear. But I'll send you your closeout checklist, and that's just it's like from A to Z what you're supposed to do and what you're supposed to have ready for your closeout. Also, when I get those, I help you out too in that, because if I see that you're getting close to your period of performance date on your